My name is Dr. Gavin Sams. For those of you who are on, head of schools of Genesis Innovation Academy. And I am going to go ahead and start our presentation. Let me see if I can share really quickly. So we are going to do some welcome and introductions, just talk about the aspects of Genesis that we think are the most important and most important to our single gender and our curriculum framework, which we call E5. And then we'll have a little bit of presentation on the high expectations culture that we expect to have, which undergirds those first two, supports them. And then some of the basic information about Genesis as a school, and then the what is also increasingly important for parents, of course, school safety. But those are sort of the nuts and bolts things that we will do at the end. So I'm going to go quickly to the introductions, and welcome and purpose as well, just to give you some context. So we always like to remind parents that we have an information session. Of course, we have things on the website, and then should you choose to attend Genesis, we will have an orientation. And the orientation is where we get into all the very, very specific things that are not on the website. Because if you're coming, there are just some details that you need to know. Of course, you can look at our handbook on the website and other things on the website. So this presentation is not necessarily about the specifics of nutrition and uniforms and our health services and all the things in our handbook and things that we will talk about at our orientation. So this is just to give you, again, a general sense about what makes Genesis different and apart and unique from other schools. So I will let our EDs who are on the call introduce themselves, if they are able and willing, which they are.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tracy DeBose. I'm the current Executive Director of Genesis Boys Academy. Pleased to have everyone on this evening.
Ms. Dees.
Hello, my name is Renetta Dees. I am the Executive Director for our Girls Academy. I also support our ESOL special education intervention and testing programming for both districts.
So we haven't gotten to the district part. So we are districts and a school, just so if anybody's confused, like, is this an APS session? And I don't think Dr. Lavu is on this call. So just so you all know, if you hear the name, Dr. Crystal Lavu is over teaching and learning. The deans of students, Ms. Taryn Rice for the Girls Academy, Mr. James Jackson for the Boys Academy. Are either of them on the call? I can't see anything right now. Okay. And another name, if you all are reaching out to me, Crystal Simmons is my executive assistant. So in case you just feel like I got to get to the guy at the top, the person at the top, I do get lots of emails, but she will make sure I get that information. But also always any of these people, the deans or the directors, are people you can reach out to. But for right now, if you are continuing on the path towards Genesis, these are two really important people. I think they're both on. Miss Neal, if you would like to introduce yourself. I thought I saw her. I can't see her right now, though. I don't know if she's having any technical difficulties.
There you go.
Unmute.
Okay. Yes, I'm Julia Neal. I'm the enrollment and data manager. And we also have Miss Jackson, who is actually the records clerk. So she will be part of the intake process for our new families as well.
Thank you, Miss Neal. And is Mr. Remy on? And I can't see. Does anybody see him? I can't. I'm not able to see screens. I'm gonna assume that.
It doesn't look like he's on, Dr.
Yeah, I know he was doing some other stuff earlier. So Mr. Remy is our parent liaison and parent. So if you are, again, trying to go through a process with Genesis, applying and enrolling, Miss Neal, but also On the front end, you're probably going to hear from Mr. Remy early, and he's always a good person that you can reach out to if you just have general questions from a parent perspective. Even if he needs to connect you with a current parent that we have, some of our volunteers who can give you a different perspective than we might. He also is a person to talk to, or either one of them, about any tours or anything that you may want to engage in to understand more about Genesis. So just a quick, a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat box, and team members will try to answer that, and I will keep going. I'll try to remember to pause after each section, the single gender, probably by girls and then for boys, and then as we go, and then take questions if you haven't gotten them answered, or if you want to speak them and are not able to put them in the chat. Even if you forget something to put it in, or we forget to answer it, we will have a question period at the end. And if you put a question in the chat, and we don't get to it again, same point, we can get to it later, don't worry. We are not trying to avoid the conversation or the question, we just may have missed it. So what is special about Genesis? The first thing that we're going to touch on is single gender education. We have a boys academy and a girls academy, and as always, it is ladies first. And so what's the whole point? The whole point is that there are things that are clearly different for girls and boys. And as much as the society is sending different messages about that and the sameness, we understand in their formative years, there's some things that are just different, whether we like it or not, whether we wish it were different or not. So in particular, we know that even as early as age 6, girls are starting to consider boys smarter than girls. Where does that come from? It's just still lingering in the environment. And so you want to make sure your daughters are in a place that is sending a different message. It also says that the research also tells us that girls typically do worse in competitive situations when boys are around them, especially in stereotypically boy areas such as math and science. I just read another report. It's an international report. It's happening all over the globe. It doesn't matter whether girls are actually capable. What matters is that they feel different about their opportunity structure. They feel differently actually about their ability. Again, it doesn't matter whether they are actually good in math and science or not. In fact, teachers consistently rate girls, on average, their math ability lower than boys, even when they are performing at a similar level of achievement. So those are just things that linger in girls' minds and in adults' minds. There's some of the data that says even parents think that their boys are better at math and science when they're not. So it's a thing that we have to fight. But at Genesis, because they're in single gender classes, a girl is always at the top in her math class. So one of the things they find is that if you feel that there are role models for this opportunity to be great in math, that it changes things. So you see girls who are good in math, even if you're not very good, it takes away the notion that girls can't do it. Maybe Shaquita can't, maybe Lauren can't, but neither one of those will say, well, girls can't. So we try to make sure it doesn't matter what the subject is, that there is no situation, even playing at recess and running races, that they understand that they are equal and capable of doing the same things as a boy, just not because there's nothing that limits them. Individually in particular, an individual girl can beat a bunch of boys at a whole bunch of stuff. And we want to make sure they understand that. So we want them to have that space free of boy distraction and boy mess and energy and all of that while they're becoming. So we know at some point they're going to look at boys and go, okay, what's going on with that? Like, we want to connect and engage in a particular way. But before they become girls who want to have relationships with boys, we want to make sure they have the best relationship possible with themselves. They need to become young women who are secure in who they are before they take any steps towards engaging in relationships with somebody on the boy side. So we do things like if you're in a classroom full of all girls, you get to talk about literature and history and culture, STEM fields, and as I mentioned, health and physical education from a woman's or a young girl's perspective. They're just questions or conversations that you can have. There are things you can read about. And I know this to be true, and this may come up, I may say it again, but there are certain books I just didn't want to read, and I still don't. I'm just not interested. And it doesn't mean those books should not be read. It's just if you're trying to get me to read as a boy, there's certain things I don't want to read, and there's certain things I do. And certainly I'm not a young lady, but it's pretty obvious that there are things that you can focus on. We get to highlight women in certain aspects of our curriculum. Our boys will study women as well, but this is for a different reason. This is to make sure our girls understand what is possible and that it becomes normal for them to talk about and to see women in all fields, all over the world, throughout time, who have done amazing things. Particularly STEM computing and technical design areas, it's the one area where women are woefully behind. Women have made great strides, girls and women, but this is the area. And again, it's about confidence and it's about practice and seeing it. We don't require that our girls grow up and become engineers or mathematicians or scientists, but we do want them to be exposed to it so that it becomes normal, and then they can make whatever decision they want, but it won't be because they don't think they can. So our girls code, as do the boys, but our girls code beginning in kindergarten. And there is some aspect of coding all the way through the 8th grade. There are engineering and design projects starting early, not just coding. And we have had several opportunities for them to engage in entrepreneurship as early as the 1st grade. So again, entrepreneurship, CEOs and business owners, that's another place where women and girls have lagged. And so we want this to become normal for them. Then there's a culture of support. We have to deal with mental health and physical health. If you look at the data, girls are often more engaged in things that cause them to be depressed and anxious. They have suicidal ideation. Boys will commit suicide more, but girls will think about it and ruminate over it a lot. And just they get sad and depressed, and then they've got to kind of get it out and work through it. And so we try to help it. Also physically, if you look at the demographic information on adults, Black women's health outcomes are near the bottom. And so now's a good time to start building in healthy habits and awareness of things that are very specific to girls and women. So our school has a culture on the girl side, and it's the framing of it, the title of it is Pretty and Positive, where the pretty is about being pretty on the inside and having good character and being positive in how you interact with each other. It is a no mean girl zone, supported by our director and our dean, with extreme energy to make sure that it is addressed anytime. And this is reinforced all the time. Rites of passage, and just in the sense of girls doing things and learning how to do things from women. There are hall meetings every week to talk through things that girls need to hear. Conflict resolution, as opposed to just kind of writing up the paperwork. The girls have issues. We sort of require them to work it out. There's a lot of conversation about what could be done differently, what's expected, and just those moments of misunderstandings get worked through. And often girls start off angry and they wind up apologetic and crying and saying, I'm sorry, because they realize that they just simply misunderstood. And so they're learning the skills of how to deal with one another within the school setting. As I said, we have a dean of students, we have behavioral support folks, and we have a counselor / social worker. And many of us are experienced without those titles in working through issues. And I mentioned recess and PE a little bit, but I do want to make that point that we know we've got the health outcomes that come later. And so we have some sort of recess and PE pretty much every day for our girls to get them used to being active and being physically fit. It's an important thing in our community. And so people sometimes think of it as a throwaway or a one-off, but it is not. For our community of women, it is specifically a target and an important ideal. I want to talk to you about our Power Her Mentoring program. For our middle school girls, though we are trying to get them to expand, it is a work that is sponsored by the Garth Brooks Teammate for Kids Foundation. Yes, the Garth Brooks, and that is a picture of him at a field trip with our girls. He flew in after a concert and flew back out to go back to another concert, if I'm not mistaken. But he wanted to spend time with these girls, our girls, his girls. And that is how he approached them and talked to them that day. And I can tell you, just if you were there, you would have felt as hopeful and that all of this was as promising as you could imagine, because he presents himself as just kind of a regular guy who he doesn't really care what you look like. He is just really about excellence and supporting excellence in every way that he can, because he's a girl dad. And so his foundation oversees it, and he has been involved, and he touches the program. Then just to remember that if you don't know Garth Brooks, he is essentially the greatest male solo artist of all time on the Billboard 200 chart. So he's involved. Morgan Stanley is involved, a Fortune 100 American multinational investment bank and financial services firm. And they do financial literacy for our girls, and they've given us the curriculum, which we are able to share with our Boys Academy as well. But the foundation has focused on girls at this moment. The other partner is Miss Maria Taylor of Sunday Night Football fame. She's a analyst on NBC Sports. She's done the French Open and all sorts of things. So she may be one of the most recognizable Black women in America, because Sunday Night Football is the highest rated show in America. And so she does the pregame and the halftime. And so pretty much everybody knows who she is, but these are her girls, her little sisters, as she calls them. And she treats them as such and is a big supporter of the whole no mean girl behavior, and has said she will have an issue if she hears about it. And they do not want to hear from her if it's not something good. And so that is the team. And again, they are looking into helping us build something very similar for the boys, but we will talk about the boys later. So just know that your girls, if you come, will have a whole host of things that focus on who they are and building them towards excellence. So the Boys Academy. So what do we know about our boys based on the research? They are extra competitive. They are extra active and aggressive. They take more risks. It has quite a bit to do with the way the brain develops over time and the hormones that rush through their little veins. They are not simply confident. They are often overconfident. They think they can do all sorts of things that they cannot do, but they don't care because they're going to say they can do them anyway. They are more likely to have struggles in school because of actual real disabilities from birth. It's just the way it is. It's not a huge number, but it is a very significant difference between them and girls. So we often think of boys as tough and resilient and all of that more than girls, but it turns out they are often very fragile in a way that we don't consider. And one of the things they are certainly early on, relative to girls, they are less empathetic. They have empathy, but they have less of it. And so as moms, sometimes moms will forget or not understand it and expect them to be emotionally connected to many things that they're not. And that's okay. They still understand right from wrong, but they don't necessarily get it yet in terms of why they shouldn't do things and why they should feel bad, and that feeling bad should be enough to stop them from doing things. So they often don't get it, but we understand that. And so we have to create a different sort of culture for them. It also lets us know, the research that is, that boys are less anxious when girls are not around. Go figure. Who would have imagined that girls could make boys anxious or tense or want to show off or want to, act out or show that they're the man when they're just still little boys to try to impress their friends usually. So certainly there's enough boy energy in and of itself to create some stuff if you're not careful, but girls tend to up the stakes just a little bit. But we also know what our experience tells us about the fact that the world is different for our boys. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you're a woman, there's a journey that you're on that is different from a man, and it is been arduous and it's difficult. The kinds of things that women have to deal with in terms of harassment, mansplaining, all that stuff. If you're a person of color, whether you're black or brown, it's going to be an issue. We know that, but we also know there are specific things that happen to dark-skinned boys and young men in this country. There are threats, there are things coming after them, there are choices that they're making, and we have to be very mindful and not forget that when we work with them, they don't understand that, we do, and we have to prepare them to live in the world that exists, not necessarily the world that we would like. So what do we do? Our boys need structure, no question. A sort of disciplined environment where they don't think that they can be given an inch and take a mile, because they will go ahead and run with it. But they also need some flexibility within that structure because their energy is just different. The way they roll is just different, and schools have not traditionally been designed for that kind of energy. Can a boy sit still? Absolutely. Is it a good idea to have them do it all day? Probably not. But they can do it. But you also have to engage where they are in terms of the things that interest them. Boys tend to, around grade 3, not lose interest in reading because the reading becomes more wordy and the pictures go away, right? And so we got to be mindful of that they've got to be able to read something, because they tend to fall behind in reading because we want them to read and discuss and explain, and they're just not made that way in general. And so we've got to be mindful of that. And they require high expectations. If you have boys and girls, you'll recognize over time that on average, not always, girls will get their stuff done. They just do. Who knows why this is? And boys will make excuses and not get anything done. And you'll look in their book bag and it's a complete and utter mess. And they were like, why didn't you turn in your homework? I don't know. I thought I turned it in. It's just a hot mess, right? So they need all of this, right? They need us to say, here is the bar. Because they tend to go and get it if they know that's what you absolutely expect. That you take all the excuses out of the way. Well, see, what had happened was, and they did this, and he was bullying me, and it was the teacher don't like me, and all that stuff. If you take it away and you just say, this is what it is, I expect my young man to get there. Otherwise, I don't know what we're dealing with. Because are you still a little bitty baby boy, or are you my big boy? Every boy wants to make his mother proud, but he also wants to make the men in his life proud. One, because that's just his mama, but the other one is somebody else sets a standard for manhood, and I want to reach it. And I want to know I'm reaching it. If you tell me what it is, I'll go get it. So we try to do that. The girls get the technology, but it's listed here in more detail only because this is the kind of thing that boys tend to, as visual creatures often and motion creatures, tend to tap into. So again, all these things are available for both genders, but the rationale and the reasoning is different. For girls, we need to make sure they're comfortable in this space. They don't miss out on opportunities because society says they can't. And for boys, it's a way to get them engaged, get their hands on things, get their eyes on things that make sense to them, movement, visuals, making things. It's not every boy, but we do see patterns. Certainly, again, boys don't like to read, but we get to find literature that makes more sense for them. And they get to read it and choose it. And the conversations are different. Forget just the literature in terms of books, but just literary stuff, movies, films that we show. If you want to talk about history with the boy, better to show him a film of bombs blowing up before you start talking about who was president. So the culture support is similar to them. I'm going to talk about rites of passage a little bit more and just what that means for boys. We have hall meetings with them too. We do conflict resolution with them too. But when you do these things, we remember that girls tend to be more verbal and boys don't want to talk. So as you're trying to get them to talk, you got to have a little different strategy. You got to have a little different patience. Sometimes it's better to take a boy on a walk and talk to him. Somehow the movement calms him down and makes him want to say more. They're just things that are different that you have to be mindful of. We try to surround them with role models. We have sports for girls and PE for girls, but obviously for boys, what we're saying is you got to give them some sort of physical outlet because they are physical creatures. It's just what we are. Scholar of the Month, again, for both sides, but for boys, we're saying we need to make it clear that we're recognizing you as both a leader and a scholar, and that we're going to appreciate you and recognize you in front of your peers and give you whatever you need to feel that incentive. So you know that excellence is rewarded. And of course, we also have a dean of students, behavior support, and the same thing for our boys. But there are different focal points in terms of what usually comes up for them in terms of issues. So rites of passage, so very specifically life skills. So again, we have it for girls, but it's really our boys, particularly our boys who are being raised often by their moms. And even sometimes when dad is around, if he's busy, some stuff gets lost. So we really have tried to focus on specific things that our boys can do, that our teachers can assign. And I can always tell the story. My own sons had to wash clothes and they had to film it and submit it. And I mean, I have to admit they hadn't been doing it. You know, my wife was washing their clothes. I'm like, baby, they old enough. And she's like, well, they'll mess it up. You know, so and that's what happens. Like, get out of the way, let me do it because you know what you're doing, right? So, but this is a thing where it's like, okay, we've got to figure out how to make sure they do it, they're comfortable with it, and it's expected of them to do. And so whether that's washing clothes, fixing a flat tire, we have a rites of passage coming up for fathers and sons. And if our boys don't have a dad, then we will find an uncle, find a brother, or we will be with them to make sure that they are becoming young men being taught by men on this journey. Again, we have similar things for our girls, but for the boys, it's important that we do it, and we do it with some men around, which gets me to the next one. So the fundamental core part of the rites of passage is to get boys to men, but you can't get boys to men until you connect men to boys. And so I'm going to just say we have the Power Her program for girls, and this comes up and it's going to keep coming up because there's a very specific thing about the exposure to women in business and in STEM that they need to see. The problem with our boys has been there have not been enough men around. If I had $1 for every time I heard a mom say she needs her son to have a mentoring program, I would be wealthy. So what we don't want to do is start a program. Because while we're looking for the men to be mentors, we are somehow forgetting that the reason we say we need a mentoring program is because there aren't enough men who are already fathering their sons, apparently. So where are we finding the men? So we're finding the men who come to teach. And if they're coming to teach, then they become the men in the house who are a part of making sure our boys understand what manhood looks like and to talk them through that. And so what we know is 15% of public school students are Black. And we can focus on Hispanic population, but if you look at the demographics in Black and Brown, but if you look at the demographics in terms of single parent homes, it's a much higher rate in Black homes than in any other community. And so we do need to make sure. Now, we have men and they will work with all of our boys, Black and Brown, but there's a very specific need that is greater in the Black community. And so 15% of public school students are Black. In the year 2021, which is the latest data I found from the National Center of Education Statistics, 1.3% of public school teachers were Black men. So 15% of public school students are Black. So even if you want your daughters to be in a place where there are men that they can see going to work and teaching them and getting comfortable with that, there's not a lot available, but it's a particular issue for our boys. Well, but 55% of Boys Academy teachers are male, 80% in grades 6 through 8. That should say in grades 3 through 8. That's a typo. So our K2 is heavily female. But once you hit 3rd grade, it starts to pick up steam in terms of the number of men that we have available for our boys. And again, I want to stress this is important because people want programs. So there is a pretty hefty study, if you will, that came out of Harvard University. The lead researcher's name is Raj Chetty. And in there, they found what kind of we know, but you know, until somebody does a paper, apparently it's not real, that what matters most for Black boys, it doesn't apply to Hispanic boys, it doesn't apply to Black girls, it doesn't apply to white boys or girls, it applies to Black boys. What matters most is the whether there's a community of fathers. It's the percentage of men who are fathering or engaged in fathering in their community. It doesn't necessarily mean it's their father. They just have to be in a community where fathers are operating, where there are men who are actively engaged in the fathering process. They say that makes the most difference in terms of their long-term outcomes. Well, what are we doing? So we feel like our job is to create a community of fathers for them at school. Hopefully, we'll bring in some of the dads, which we're trying to do, who are present and who are available, and they can become a community or part of the community of fathers for all of the boys at our school. It is a very specific thing that they found, that this determines success. And just for the record, the only other thing that they found was if you're in a community that's mixed, it has something to do with whether white people are racist in that community on some measure from some survey or something. I don't know what they did. So those were the two things. So we are really about putting in front of them men who can teach English and math and science and social studies, but who also can model for them what this looks like. So the curriculum. So let me pause. I did single gender. Let me pause. I don't know if there are any questions or anything in the chat or anything that needs to be addressed. If not, I will keep going.
I do have. Hi, I did
No,
have
the
a
chat is
question.
clear, but okay. No, go ahead.
So my question is, what does the Men to Boys program as of right now, what does that look like or entail a little bit
In
more
1
defined?
mile, turn left.
Give me an example of what you're thinking of.
So what does that program just really kind of look like? What is the day-to-day activity with it? Is it a day-to-day thing? Is it a during school time? What does it really kind of look like?
So I think I'm stressing that it's not a formal program because that's not necessarily what we want. That what we want is they're being taught by men for 7 hours a day, and their behavior is being supported and managed by men 7 hours a day. Their difficulties, their concerns, their when they're upset, there are men who are there who are supporting them and working them through that and setting the expectations for them, showing them how to do everything from tying shoes to how to have a discussion to how to handle an argument or disagreement with a friend or peer. So we do have the programs that we have on Saturdays, which we're trying to now do once a month, but we've probably done once a semester, where we bring the dads out or other men to work with the boys on specific tasks and be a part of that. We just had one fraternity come in and sort of hang out with the boys and read to them, and another is coming as well to do the rites of passage thing on the Saturday. But again, I'm stressing that we all talk about programs and activities, but what we want is a spirit of fathering, which is an everyday, all day thing. And that's going to buy us more than a speaker or a field trip when it comes to the long-term success of our boys. Does that answer your question?
Okay, got it. Yes, it does. And thank you for the explanation. I appreciate that.
Okay. So our E5 curriculum is basically built on innovation, making sure our kids can think. If you've seen the website, you will know that it's really about mapping core subjects to something that requires critical thinking, application, and synthesis for things that are happening in the real world. So math to economics and finance is always the easiest one to explain, because the point is most of us were never taught, and until this past year, it wasn't required that anybody be taught it in public schools, in terms of it being financial literacy. And they've now required at least one class for high schoolers, But our goal is to make sure that math, that the kids can do math in the context of doing problems related to money and finance and economics. And every subject is like that. So that's a particular need for the community that we serve. But so is everything else, the ability to express oneself, the ability to deal with ethical issues, the notion of being an entrepreneur and not being somebody who just goes and gets a job. Nothing wrong with that, but just expanding your horizons. And so that's the essence of what E5 is and our applied learning. So it's just some things we've done in the past during that summer when we were all, well, when the rest of the world kind of understood what the concerns of the communities of color was about, because of the George Floyd and all the other issues. We had our scholars read Just Mercy, summarize that, write an op-ed about what happened, create a family documentary. So those are different ways of expressing oneself. But the op-ed was also a foray, a dive into ethics and what's right and wrong here. Like, how do I express what I think is not right about this situation, and let me write an opinion about that. And so we have to teach our kids argumentative essays, and they usually just write an essay. Well, in this case, an op-ed is a shorter form, usually, of the essay they might normally write. But it matters to something that they've experienced and they see and have to deal with, if not every day, certainly at some point in their lives. I'm not going to get into this chart, but just know math is about data, and you can graph it, and you can actually use that math and these equations to figure out which car to buy. And I'm not going to get into the gory details, but the bottom line is there might be a car that seems cheap in the beginning, and by a few years, you'll realize that it's a lot more expensive because it requires more gas, it requires more repairs, or whatever the case may be. And the more expensive car is a higher quality car, and over time, it might be a better use of it might be a better purchase for you. So that's not something we all think about in terms of why they're teaching us how to draw these lines and what's about these X's and Y's, who cares? But there's a way to use that to actually make really good decisions in life. We started talking about Tulsa Race Riots before it became a thing after that summer of COVID and Black Lives Matter being elevated. We were talking about the Tulsa Race Riots, and we actually had to create a different. It's not in the standards, the Georgia standards for social studies, so we had to create our own standard, if you will, and put it in there for our teachers and say, you're going to teach that. The seventh graders have to study Africa. Well, that study begins at the time that Europe divides Africa up and colonizes it. So we had to add our own unit on the empires of Africa. Wasn't in the standards, but we get to do that. And we're talking about this through the lens of economics, and why are people enslaving people? Why are people going to war? It's usually about money and economics, the slave trade. So we get to add these things, and we've done them in the past, and these are the kinds of things we continue to try to expose our scholars to. We talked about computer engineering and robots. Those, not only do they code, but they build robotics and engineer those, and they do some engineering design. Here is a connection that is not on our chart, but the point is, it doesn't matter, right? We can be flexible to make connections. This is an example of a teacher who used a rental agreement, a lease agreement, in an English class to connect it to economics. So it's about reading informational text, which is a standard in English, but connecting it something that's real and important for kids to understand as early as possible. Like, these are contracts and they matter, and it tells you how much you have to pay, and you got to pay it or else. So we can make those kinds of connections. We've had pitch nights for entrepreneurship. We just had an expo to showcase what people have done. We've done an entrepreneurial fair where kids have sold things that they've made. So we try to bring it all together for kids to show what they can do and have done, and for parents to experience that. Our field trips, we try to make sure they're connected to our standards, and they help kids see or touch or experience things that they would not otherwise in the classroom. A quick note on just our Gifted and Accelerated program, which we sort of relaunched this past year, where we're trying to get more gifted certified teachers, either getting our teachers in classes or hiring teachers who have that certification, so that we can service those kids, but also that we can support our teachers in learning how to, in general, give kids more opportunities to critically think, whether or not they're in the gifted program or not. We got a bit sidetracked after we lost our high school a couple of years ago, and we are certainly looking to get it back. But we had one of our hallmarks was 8th grade accelerated courses. So if your kid was identified after the 7th grade as being a high performer, they could take at least one high school credit, which we have available for many 8th graders, and as many as 5. And so we are certainly looking to get back to that this year. We may need to be creative about that, but our goal is always to give kids an opportunity to be pushed. So I'm going to stop there and ask if there are any questions there before I get into some other more basic information. Anything in the chat or? If
Dr.
not,
Sams.
okay.
Dr.
Yes.
Sam, someone just mentioned, why was the high school taken away?
Well, it wasn't taken.
You said taken.
I know. I think I'm just bitter. Sorry. We could not secure an appropriate facility in time to keep it going. We had secured a facility, or we were about to, and the pandemic hit, and it was a church facility, and that church shut down for 2 years. Another church that we had an option also shut down their services, and they decided not to go back into the lease market. And we were working with some other entities, and it just didn't work. We had them on campus. We were virtual 1 year, and they were on campus 1 year, and then we just could not find a suitable location for the high school. So unfortunately, we had to temporarily stop serving high school students. So I'm a little bit perturbed because I had 3 kids who were in high school at the time, but now I had to send them somewhere else. So I say taken, like, because it makes me feel better. That's somebody's fault. But basic information. Some of this we've kind of talked about, but we are a public school, so people get sometimes a little bit confused about what a charter is. So we cannot be selective or anything like that. We're a regular public school. We do have a statewide attendance zone, so nobody has to use a cousin's address or something to try to get in. If you live in the state of Georgia, you can just use the actual address that you live at. No residency, grade or tuition requirements, again, free. If you're the residency is statewide, again, we cannot screen. We're not going to look at your child. Your child has all A's and another child has all A's and 1 B, and your child gets in. We can't do that. And as Dee's mentioned, we have 2 academies, which are also 2 districts. So we report directly to a state authorizer, which is a lot of work, but it also gives us the opportunity to do things a little differently. We are enrolling K-8 in the fall of this year, coming up 2024. The high school, if we're hoping to get that back, we're targeting 2025, just for anybody who's wondering, 25, 26. And so because we're a state school, all of the state standards which are tested, we're accountable for. But as you saw, in certain subjects, we can create our own topics and targets, and in some sense, our own standards in terms of what we think our scholars should know, and how we teach those standards is completely up to us. Just real quick, we are some school day stuff, some basics. 2:45, K4 gets out. 3:15 is when our 5th through 8th graders get out. And that our 5th graders have a middle school schedule because of the historical expectations on them in terms of their academics. And so we have before care and sibling care and morning care. Sibling care means if you have a child who gets out early and they have a sibling who gets out late, we will hold the younger child so you don't have to do 2 pickups. And then the last section that we'll talk about is just a quick and brief little primer on school safety, just so you know. Because there's been some outbreaks of some things. We've just had to deal with COVID and norovirus, and it's all over. So we do have touchless fountains and paper dispensers. Our teachers are equipped with things to sanitize their classroom. Our team is equipped to sanitize at a higher level. And we just used a private company to come in, a professional company to come in and do some work just to be sure. We recently replaced last year our HVAC system. It has the HEPA filters, so we've done all of that. We have a school resource officer. We have cameras for the outside of the building, and we have cameras in all the hallways, stairwells, and in every classroom. The cameras are really to help with instruction, but they are also available to help in case there are some issues that we need to review and address. Our main building doors are security doors. They're metal doors, and we have an entry system that you have to be buzzed in. And we run drills, and nobody can be 100% safe. Obviously, there's no such thing, but we have taken requisite precautions, and we are about to upgrade some of our systems this year with a grant. So whatever we have should get better by the time 2024-25 begins. And lastly, I'll just run through this a little bit just to close it out and just say, we really have high expectations. We want our kids to become, our vision actually talks about it becoming, strong young men and women who are accomplished, who are thoughtful, and who are servant leaders. So we value character, and our values matter. Our clubs and activities in our minds are leadership opportunities. And so I'm not going to focus on what you see here, but just know we use these things. I mean, it's great to express yourselves and to get involved in something that you're interested in. And if you're really good at art or sport, but we also use it as a way to help develop their ability to lead, to communicate, to plan, to learn how to cooperate, to control their emotions, to learn how to lose, which is a big deal, by the way, to lose with grace. So anything that you would like as a parent, that you have some expertise or somebody who does, and there's not a club that we have at that moment, we love our parents to volunteer or to send us people that they know who we might need to, even if we have to pay a fee to get them to provide a service. We are absolutely open to parents engaging with us in that way. Just want to make sure you understand that we have a value every month, the Genesis Power Values, and we talk about them every month, and we try to incorporate them in things that we do, so that we're constantly talking about what does it mean to be a strong young man or woman of character and integrity. And so we do address these every month. So for instance, gratitude, we will talk about just a basic lesson of appreciating what you have and who you have in your life, as opposed to always complaining about what you don't have. And so that will be a constant message throughout the month. And we don't let go of it. We'll say, hey, something has come up. Remember, a couple months ago, what did we talk about? What's that bird that begins with a G that says you should be thankful, gratitude? Okay, yes, we're good. So it doesn't go away, but we do focus on it for a month, and we do it for all of our values to make sure that kids can get reinforcement to let them know that it's important. This is just something that I have in here to let people know that the challenges are real, and it matters to be in a school with people who care and believe, because the systems themselves were never structured to believe. So this is quote from a former president of the United States, Warren G. Harding, who said he did not want the states to attempt to educate people, whether Black or white, which I thought was interesting, into something they are not fitted to be. I have no sympathy with the half-baked altruism that would overstock us with doctors and lawyers of whatever color and leave us in need of people fit and willing to do the manual work of a workaday world. And this was in a book about school and how the school systems were developed, particularly in the early 20th century. And the idea here was there's only a certain amount of people who can do something amazing, important, and high end. The rest of you, Black or white, and he was certainly speaking of poor whites in rural America at the time, you all need to get a job and do the work that we don't want to do. You need to shine my shoes. You need to cultivate my fields. You need to build my my bookcase or whatever the case may be. You do the manual stuff. Let the few of us who are worthy do the intellectual work, right? So there's nothing wrong with vocational work, but the point was it was already designed to say there's only certain people who are worthy of the other kind of work. And so the system was never designed to encourage everybody to think critically and to solve really deep problems. But that's the expectation of education to us, that every child will think critically, that they will be prepared for life, the life that is out there waiting for them. So it's life prep, not test prep, because nobody takes these tests outside of school, that they will become job creators and understanding the value in that and not simply job takers. That greatness really begins with our kids. It's in them. It's our job to bring it out of them with the expectations that together as a partnership, we will drive them towards success. So if there are any questions, the presentation is now ended.
Dr. Sams, we had someone ask about some programs that happen during the school. I know we have the Black History program that we do every year. And then we do have like a pep rally or two.
What was the specific question?
It says, what are some programs do you all do during school time? Example, rallies, Black History program, etc.
We do Student of the Month.
Oh yeah, thank you,
Honor
Mr.
Roll.
Thank you, Mr. Dubose.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the perfect answer, I think. So Scholar of the Month, which is really leadership value of the month in some sense. And then we have academic programs. I think my directors just took some scholars to lunch today who had all A's. And so most of our programs are focused on the excellence of our scholars. And then, like I said, we have, the Power Hers once a month for the girls. We're doing the rites of passage specifically for the boys on Saturdays. So that's not during the day, but we do our morning talks. But we value instructional time, and so I think for us,
well, we also had authors come in and speak to our
yes,
scholars.
we have authors
for the
come
Black
in.
for the
Right.
I can't
So
remember what
we
it
have
was.
authors come in. So people come in to support the instruction. So that was authors, and they were talking about books and they were reading their books, which is a big deal in particular in elementary. So we look for ways to supplement. We have after school clubs and activities, but instruction, if you're coming in during the day, we have a book parade for our little ones. But that's about them. That's after they've gotten into the books and gotten into character and understanding the books, and it's their book and it's their character. And that gets them excited about that. And when you're little, you can read the same book over and over again. That's kind of the point, to get fluency. And so the parade is often supported by older kids so that the little kids know that it matters to the community that they're doing this and that they read books. And so, again, we try not to disrupt during the day much, but field trips, support instruction, they will do that during the day. People will come in. We've had policemen and firemen come in, and other folks come in to speak to the kids. But even that we do, but we do value the instructional time that we have.
Tomorrow, Dr. Sams, we actually have a mobile science unit coming in for our K2 learners that our K2 teachers put together, and there will actually have a science assembly tomorrow on living things reptiles and living animals. Something else to support their science instruction.
Yep, thank you, Ms. Dees. Another great example of the programs that we prefer, that gets them excited about the work that we want them to do, not just on paper, but to explore it, to feel it, to see it, to hear about it from others, because our voices tend to kind of drone on. It's like being a parent. They hear from you every day. So yes. So hopefully that answers your question.
Mr. DeBose, answered the question. We had a question about band or music. We do not currently offer those subjects. However, we do have in our coding classes where they do bring in, they code with music so that they are setting up musical tracks and things like that. But as far as like a music or chorus type class or band, we do not currently have that.
Hopefully, we'll be bringing someone in this semester as it pertains to music. They will lay tracks for their music.
Thank you, Ms. Mack.
Okay, parents.
Special classes,
Okay, what is it?
specials. So like
What's
Dr.
the question?
Sam,
Okay, what's the
specials.
question?
Special
Like
Specials.
literally,
that
what are our specials?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. DeBose.
So art, PE, technology, photography. I'm missing something.
Not
Um,
photography, filming and marketing.
Filming. I'm sorry. Filming. I
And
see
coding and robotics.
cameras all the time. So yes.
And art
Right.
for K-5.
Right. So it's kind of like there's like a bucket of stuff. So there's the STEM course, which they can do, and Ms. Mack is on the call. You've heard her voice. So they do coding, they do robotics, they do engineering design, they do some of this laying of tracks in the music. And when they get to middle school, the courses are split into a more pure STEM and then a film and video and photography and all things, digitals, things that you can podcast and things like that. But the technology theme is across both. And the other one is more of the electronic music, but also pure coding and robotics again at a higher level. And then we have an art class where they'll do mostly visual arts, but they also do crafts and sort of in elementary in terms of the sculpture. We are looking at language, Spanish. We've done it before. And we were going to do it again and we got sidetracked this year. So we're going to try to bring that back in some fashion and maybe a little bit more of art, more artsy things related to visual arts and not just sort of just the STEM in the upper school. So we're looking at that. And so just stay tuned for some additional options. But we try to be flexible. So we try to create those buckets so that we can shift focus for the scholars and do something interesting for them.
Dr. Sam, this is Ms. Mack. The scholars did get an opportunity to plant seeds, plant their garden, and hopefully when the dads come out to help on Saturdays, we will get our garden ready as the agricultural piece to have that as a opportunity for growing vegetables and through the classroom as they present their program, to the kids as well.
Yes, we do have a garden that the interaction by the kids with that garden will be done through the classroom structure. So it's not quite a special or a program, but it is an activity that is a little bit more hands-on and engaging for the scholars to learn what they're required to learn in the content, and some of which they're not required to learn. We just think it's a good idea. Any other questions?
There is one, but I would prefer not to read it just because I'm a little
Just
stuck reading
asking
it
about
myself.
the attrition for teachers, Dad. Not Dad, but I just talked to my father. I'm sorry, Dr. Sams.
Well, I hope he's well.
He is. The average tenure of teachers and the differences in that between the boys' academy and the girls' academy.
I don't have those statistics. I guess if you email us, we can send it to you. I can tell you, we just went to job fairs and there was conversation about, well, we need to figure out how to offer people this stuff. And we're like, offer who? Because we don't have a sense that we're going to need a lot of teachers. So, but that's anecdotal. That's not data. I mean, obviously well, not obviously, when the pandemic hit, it was bad. So, but we've kind of settled in. And again, I don't have numbers, but I don't, like last year, we felt good about it and we feel pretty good this year in terms of that question. Is Common Core the math that is taught here? That's an interesting question. My suspicion is that the standards, the Georgia standards, are based on the Common Core, but the Georgia standards are what we teach. Common Core is a set of standards that was national, and then each state decided how they were going to play in that space. And so I would guess that most math that is taught in public schools now have some element of Common Core in them, whether people admit it or not. And the gifted program, I believe, begins in the first grade. I don't know if I have that right. I know I've seen.
It
Yes,
starts in
it's
first
first
grade,
grade.
Doc.
Okay.
And we teach the Georgia Standards of Excellence. Those are the exact standards that we teach in math in all public schools in the state of Georgia. It's called the Georgia Standards of Excellence.
So what is the student teacher ratio? The class sizes are somewhere between 16 and 18. They could go a little higher, sometimes they're a little lower. The teacher ratio is much smaller. It's probably 12 to 1. Could be a little lower. Because we have quite a few, we have special education teachers who don't necessarily have a classroom. We have interventionists and instructional support folks. And so the numbers start to go down. Paraprofessionals, they're not formally teachers, but we have other adults in the building. So we have pretty small class sizes, and we have quite a few adults to support when necessary. And I think that's the last one.
Yep, that's it, Doc.
All righty. If there's nothing else, I will say thank you, parents. And again, our website, if you're applying, the applications are there. If you have questions, remember, you can reach out. You can email admissions@giacademy.org. Somebody can type that in, admissions@giacademy.org, or you can reach out to Miss Neal or Mr. Remy. And Miss Julia Neal would be jneal@giacademy.org, but admissions@giacademy.org is probably your best bet because several people will check that inbox. You can call the school directly if you don't remember and just ask. We'd love to hear from you. And if you apply, you'll probably hear from us anyway, and just to check in to see how you're doing and if you have any questions. So one way or the other, if this is a place you're thinking about, we will be glad to have you, and we'll be glad to answer any questions in the future.
We had 2 come up for tours. What's the email for tours? Is it info?
Or admissions.
Or
It should be admissions, but you could also, if you go on the website, that's also where you can register for a tour. And they are on Wednesdays. And we ask that you register because it allows us to make sure we don't overbook in case we have a lot of interest for a particular day. And if you go to the website, it's under the admissions tab for information sessions / tours. Okay. All righty. Well, parents, thank you. And you can go back, and if you weren't watching, you can go back and watch Fonnie Willis trial. It might be over or for the day. But if you know of anybody else that is interested, again, you could send them to our website or have them email us, and we may do another session where we don't know, but definitely have them reach out, and we will be attentive as possible to let them know what we're all about. And they can also come for a tour, even if they didn't obviously get a chance to be on the information session. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great evening. And we hope to see you soon.